Jai Prabhuji. Welcome to a class in our Retroprogressive Yoga Institute. My name is Swami Krishnananda and we'll be speaking on Prabhuji's writings, in particular his Bhakti Yoga book, The Path of Love. Even before we get to the writing themselves, we want to establish what is the direction and purpose of these classes. It is oftentimes that people speak on a certain topic, on a certain concept, and each one has a completely different interpretation and meaning to that concept itself. For example, love. If you ask 5 to 10 different people what love is to them, you will see that you will get a variety of different answers. And what we want to try and do is walk in the same direction. And for this, we are holding these classes. And then we are breaking down small little points in order to establish as much as possible this togetherness and to be able to stride along in the same direction. The first and most important point is speaking on spiritual masters' writings. Why would a disciple even attempt to do so? What can be accomplished through that? Is the message in need of clarification? Is it missing anything a disciple can add to? Even explaining what is in the book as it is can result guaranteed less well than it is by a disciple through a class. So what is the purpose of this? The purpose is that the writings of spiritual masters, of realized being, the Holy Scriptures, present truth perfectly. The wisdom is perfectly stated there. The disciple can show how to extract the most amount of spiritual nutrients from these scriptures in order for us to be able to use what is the wisdom and the truth in the book for evolution and involution within our spiritual quests. The writings of the Holy Scriptures are sort of like, metaphorically speaking, like maps to ones that embark on a journey of searching what is the meaning of life. And while any one of us can take a map and engage with it, actually making it useful for us to advance in the journey that we are on requires a little bit of a preparation and knowledge of how to use these maps. And that is the place of a disciple. A disciple is one that attempts to dedicate himself and his life to such journey and quest of understanding what is the purpose of human life. And so the path of learning how to engage with the words of the spiritual master is something that can be shared, because it can be looked at, it can be read, it can be engaged with as learning a new path, a new religion. But these truths are meant to be utilized for one's own evolution and involution and existential transformation within the spiritual path. And thus we engage in a master-disciple relationship, because the master is not different than his writings. Highest form of consciousness is what is presented and manifested. And when we learn how to engage with that properly, we engage in a master-disciple relationship. And this is what we can share. And this is what a disciple can give a little light on. Not attempting to speak on what the spiritual master tried to say, or think to explain or illustrate something that is missing from the book, but saying, how do I create the proper conditions for this knowledge to help me within my quest, within my journey, within my need to know what is the purpose of human life and what we are doing here. And so this is what we're going to try to aim to direct to in these classes. We will never speak on what Prabhuji meant to say, because there is no way for the disciple to actually assume or pretend to know what the master meant to say. But it's always a lesson. What can I understand? And each one of us, once we learn how to engage, is situated in the development, in their spiritual development, in the spiritual journey, in a different place. And so we learn different things because we are different, and sometimes we're more open and sometimes we're more closed and more accessible. And so it's never going to be the same, but we're going to try to learn how to engage with that. So wherever we are on the path, we allow ourselves to create a meeting with the wisdom of the master in the form of his writing. And when we allow this wisdom to saturate our being, we enter into a master-disciple relationship and allow the guidance of the master to show us, to lead us in our journey. And so let's speak about what is a master, what is his disciple, and what is this relationship. And I'm using the word spiritual master. It's a little bit, I remember the first time I heard of it, I thought, that's insane. I heard somebody say, this is my spiritual master, and I thought, I was shocked. And it's fine, it's natural reaction. It's a natural reaction for anyone who comes from his only reality information about what life is in this world. And this world, and what this world teaches you that life is about, is not existential in nature. It's not what is the purpose of human life. So because this world is made up, the structure of it, the goals and the aims are made up from biological and instinctive needs of the human being. The brain is structured to function for the survival of the fittest. And from that point of view, when we look at the term spiritual master, it will tell us, it means to us, that we have master over another. We have dominance and control over another. And it makes sense from that world and from that perspective. And again, we're speaking about the human life when it's dedicated to goals that are very instinctive and survival based. In spiritual life, spiritual master does not mean the same thing, and we do not speak about the same point of view as we do from what we know from the world. Spiritual master is someone who has mastered himself. It has nothing to do with the objective world. It has nothing to do with dominance over another. It only has to do with oneself. It's completely subjective. And so one is a spiritual master because he has mastered himself. That means he has perfected his discipleship. And he's so advanced that he's surrendered in his life and in his discipleship to follow what the purpose of human life is. This is a completely different perspective. So when we started the class by saying we want to create the proper conditions, preparations, and understandings, it's because we want to know that spiritual master is not a menacing term as used, and I understand it because I experienced it myself as well the first time I heard it, but this is not what it means. It's not referring to this from this same point of view. And when we learn to look at it through the proper eyes, because the disciple is one that kind of cleanses the lens of his eyes to know how to look at things through the spiritual point of view and not the worldly point of view, it does not hold the same meaning. Spiritual master in the terms of the world is completely different than spiritual master in the terms of religion, of, let's say, Bhakti Yoga, because this is what we're speaking of right now. And so that is a very important point, and we will be touching on a few points as this one through this class, because it's important to understand what is a master, what is a disciple, what is this meaning, what it means to read the words and the truth and the wisdom and the consciousness within the books and the Holy Scriptures. A disciple is someone, and I will speak for myself, who has tried to engage in life as society teaches us that this is what life should be about. This is the goals, these are the aims, this is what we should want. And even though you try, and this doesn't mean that you failed, it means it could be everything is very prosperous for you. But your heart will not allow you to accept it. And the more things are flourishing, this echoing burden of your heart telling you, this is not what life is about. What is this life? What are you doing here? It's an echo within you, reminding you, this is not what you've come to do. This is not what life is about. And it's really burdening. And until, as a disciple, you situate with your master in his blessed shadow, and thus you begin the evolutionary and involutionary process under his blessed guidance, and your heart will be at peace from that. Maybe not always your mind, your heart will be at peace. It will be burdened. At least that's my experience. And there's other discipleship, other disciples. And those are very, very rare souls. So blessed, so prepared. They do not need to go through the same arduous path like the rest of us. They've come to this world, they understood and completed the lesson on the very first try, and they continue and will continue with the same spiritual excellence with every lesson to come, because those are the spiritual masters, those as the perfected surrendered human beings. And I'll give you an example for what I mean. I will share with you a story. So in Prabhuji's life, there was a time that he was a householder with wife and children and workplace. And even while all that with very humble means of life, he wanted very prominent spiritual master to stay in his ashram for a retreat for a little while, but he did not go empty-handed. And we're talking many, many years back. And so he wanted to create he created a little pamphlet for him to offer something to the Guru. He made the pamphlet by cutting out things from music. It's a whole big production, and he had to go to the production. You know, he works night shifts and with children and with wife and the money and everything. It's not easy. And he created this pamphlet, and he managed to produce and to bring it, and he made this time from his workplace, and he went overseas to meet this guru in this ashram. And one of the nights there was a gathering in a big hall with many guru with his monastic disciples and the people of the retreat, and it was hundreds of people. And this guru was correcting different monastic disciples, and he happened to correct Prabhuji as well. He he screamed at him in front. He screamed that Ramakrishna is trying to ruin organization with what he did, referring to the pamphlet and I don't know what, and this whole big thing. And Prabhuji said, yes, Gurudev. The next day, while walking in the ashram, he encountered this great Mahatma who was walking with a few monastic disciples, and he said, or visitors, and he said, look at this Ramakrishna, what he did, this beautiful pamphlet to our organization, and what a great devotee. So when Prabhuji told us of this, he told us from the perspective, at least what he words, the teachings of the master are always, whatever you managed to learn is because he showed you, but maybe he didn't explain it exactly as you understood it. And so he spoke about how gurus from India, spiritual masters from India, work with their disciples. And he gave that example a few times, but that stayed for a long time with me. And slowly through the years, it never left me. I was always thinking about this situation, and I let it simmer within me. And I understood that this is how gurus should work, and this is how gurus work, but I also understood with time the greatness of the discipleship. Now, look, within stories, things sound nice and like so amazing or beautiful or divine. But once you live as a disciple, you know that these realities are something you need to face, and they are not like the story sounds once you face them. And so I was thinking how it was, how Prabhuji did that, because you're not, it's not like somebody tells you, oh, no, to be prepared as a disciple. It's not like someone, you know when the correction is going to come or how is it going to come, and not to give excuses, not to explain, oh no, but Gurudev, I meant like this and like that, and I put all my money and all these things that you see through the years that all of us kind of still have a little something that we want to prove that we try to do the right thing. We do mean well, you know, and it's true. And nobody says you're meaning. And then there's people, and then there's souls like Prabhuji. I remember I asked him a couple of years ago because I was wondering about this so much, and asked him because as ego, as mind, as survival of the fittest mechanism, you don't want the guru to correct you in front of everybody. You want, oh, please, why don't you tell me alone in front of everybody? You feel ashamed. Natural things. Nobody's saying this is good or bad. We're talking about things in the spiritual life, what it means on the spiritual basis. What is surrender? What is preparation? And what is discipleship? And so I asked him, but how did you feel when he corrected you like that, when he shouted on you in front of all of these people? And so Prabhuji said, I was so happy you acknowledged me. I was so taken aback. I remembered when I was reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita and this devotee approached Nityananda Prabhu. And Nityananda was so upset with him, and he was kicking him. And the devotee was feeling highly favored. And so look, this is not something that you encounter. And I said, but after you left, you because what happens is also when you get corrected in front of others, when you leave the situation, if you already did not show any resistance, you say to others, no, but I meant well, you are going to defend your ego somehow, survival of the fittest. But Prabhuji didn't speak to anyone. And Prabhuji said, yes, Gurudev. And the next day, when he encountered, and he told him how wonderful he is. Thank you, Gurudev. Never an explanation, never a justification. So this is someone who's so prepared that when I try to explain what is a spiritual master, you can understand what this means, because most of us are making strides into that, but it is completely evolutionary process. And then there's those souls that are established, completed, understood the lesson, and will understand each lesson to come. So we're explaining what is the difference between a spiritual master, what is the difference between a disciple, and why such a being can guide others. And so in our journey, we try to create the proper conditions of discipleship, and that means openness. And that means if we come with everything that we acquired in our life and know, we will not be able to perceive the presence of the Master through his writings, because we already know. And the disciple, what stands between him and allowing this meeting of a presence that is the Master to reach, to show you, to guide you towards yourself as a presence, this requires some openness. And some openness means to create some space and question. And you need to question. You need to question what you know, your convictions, your understandings, your histories, your mechanisms, everything that you've come to be, your self-identity. And why is that? Because even your self-identity is built on things in this world that you were told that you are. What you are existentially, and I will digress and explain what I mean by existential. Prabhuji does this little thing with us, and he says, do you know you exist? Yes. And you should ask yourself right now, how do you know you exist? You can run it back as much as you want. You know you exist. You don't know how you exist, but you know you exist. And as long as you exist, you know you are in existence. And there is no explanation as to how you know it. That is existential knowledge. That is where the self-realize is based. But that is a little glimpse. You can ask yourself now, do I know that I exist? Yes, but how do I know it? I don't know how I know it. It's not my mind that knows it. It's not the brain that knows it, but I know it. That is existential truth. And that is unchanging. And as long as you are, that will not change. The rest of the things that we know about ourselves are not on the same level. Our name could have been different. Our language, our habits, everything that comes from our family, these are all things that could have been different. They're not existential. They're not inherent to what you are as a human being. Knowing that you exist is a small glimpse into what is something existential. And so when a disciple is on a journey, is embarking on that journey, you kind of need to see, okay, I need to look at everything else that I think that I know that I am and be able to question it. And even though the Master cannot question it for you because it's your own process, it's something, awareness that you are not the instinct. You are not the animalistic tendencies. These are biological things that happens within you. Within this body, many things are biological that conduce us to be a certain way. or the brain has certain mechanism because survival of the fittest and because of habit that is formed, and you need to look at it and see, is this what I am? And it's really difficult to do that. And the master can show you and guide you to look at it, but he cannot see instead of you. And so that is when you allow yourself to, with the guidance of the master, even through his books, at least be able to question our convictions or our identity as what we know from what we acquired in this world, and this means what's based on the biology, on this body that's changing. And when you're a child, there's a chemistry that works in certain ways and other ways. When you grow up, and it's all changing, and you're all subjected to it, and you believe that this is you, this is what I want. And this is the time to question that, for you to be able to access that existential knowledge. You need to go through breaking apart and looking at what is really not you. And the master can guide you to that. But you need to be able to work together with him. And that doesn't mean physically together with him. As we said, the spiritual master is a presence of consciousness. Even through his book, he's not different. The writings of the spiritual masters, the answer, the body, the gaze, the silence, whatever it is, there is no difference in the quality of the presence. And so all of them are emitting, because he will always be a spiritual master, and truth will always be truth, if you allow yourself the space to be a disciple. And so the master is like a star in the sky. He can guide you by illuminating the darkness and showing the path. He cannot do things for you. And so initially you learn small things. You learn what is to pay attention. The first thing anyone for the first time meditates says, usually, yes, not everybody, of course, like, oh, my mind was so active. I had so much trouble with my mind. And then you need to learn how to look at it, not from the worldly point of view of trying to achieve, again, the survival of the fittest you want to achieve and accomplish, but from the spiritual point of view. And the spiritual point of view is, I didn't even pay attention to how much noise within my mind I am subjected to all the time. And now for a moment I sit still and I can recognize this. And that is to pay attention. And as a disciple, you begin to learn to pay attention. And when you pay attention as a practice, it becomes awareness. And when awareness is uninterrupted by all these needs and wants and speaking of the minds that we are always accustomed to be subjected to, when the mind, when you allow that space and that attention to become awareness, and when it's fluid, it becomes consciousness. And consciousness meets consciousness. Not that there is a separation, but as you allow the presence of the master as consciousness to show you, to guide you, to recognize yourself as consciousness. And so now that we create a little bit of an understanding about what it means, master, disciple, reading the words of the master, I would like to end by reading Prabhuji's biography. It's the only time that he writes on himself without any path that is also a part of the writing. It's my favorite, I must say, and it's, if we use what we spoke of now, of allowing these words, this presence of consciousness that is the Master, to echo within us. Let's do the first attempt with that biography. I can see nothing better than that. The story of my life is nothing more than a long journey from what I believed myself to be to what I truly am. It is a tale of transcending the personal and the universal, the partial and the total, the illusory and the real, the apparent and the true. My life is a flight beyond the temporal and the eternal, darkness and light, the human and the divine. This story is not public, but profoundly private and intimate. Only what begins ends, what starts finishes. One who lives in the present is neither born nor dies, because what lacks a beginning never ends. I am a disciple of a seer, of an enlightened being, somebody who is a nobody. I was initiated in my spiritual childhood by the moonlight. A seagull that loved flying more than anything else in life inspired me. In love with the impossible, I crossed the universe, obsessed with a star. I have walked infinite paths, following the footsteps of those who saw. Like the ocean that longs for water, I sought my home within my own house. I am a simple intermediary who shares his experience with others. I am not a guide, teacher, instructor, educator, psychologist, enlightener, pedagogue, evangelist, rabbi, posek, healer, therapist, satsangist, psychic, leader, medium, savior, or guru, but only a traveler whom you can ask for directions. I'll gladly show you a place where everything comes upon arrival. A place beyond the sun and the stars, beyond your desires and longings, beyond time and space, beyond concepts and conclusions, beyond everything that you believe you are or imagine that you will be. I'm just a whim and maybe a joke from the sky and the only mistake of my beloved spiritual master. Aware of the abyss that separates revelation and our works, we live in a frustrated attempt to faithfully express the mystery of the Spirit. I paint sighs, hopes, silences, aspirations, and melancholies, inner landscapes and sunsets of the soul. I am a painter of the indescribable, inexpressible, and indefinable of our depths. And maybe I just write colors and paint words. Since childhood, little windows of paper captivated my attention. Through them I visited places, met people, and met friends. Those tiny mandalas have been my true elementary school, high school, and college. Like skilled teachers, these yantras have guided me through contemplation, attention, concentration, observation, and meditation. Like a physician studies the human body or a lawyer studies law, I have dedicated my entire life to study myself. I can say with certainty that I know what resides and lives in this heart. It is not my intention to convince anyone of anything. I neither offer theology or philosophy, nor do I preach or teach. I simply think out loud. The echo of these words may lead you to the infinite space of peace, silence, love, existence, consciousness, and absolute bliss. Do not search for me. Search for yourself. You do not need me or anyone else because the only thing that really matters is you. What you yearn for lies within you as what you are, here and now. I am not a merchant of recycled information, nor do I intend to trade with my spiritual state. I do not teach beliefs or philosophies, but speak only about what I see and share solely what I know. Avoid fame, for true glory is not based on public opinion, but on what you really are. What matters is not what others think of you, but your own appreciation about who you are. Choose bliss over success, life over reputation, and wisdom over information. If you succeed, you will not only know admiration, but also true envy. However, jealousy is a tribute that mediocrity paid to the talent, just an acceptance and an open declaration of inferiority. I advise you to fly freely and never be afraid of making mistakes. Learn the art of transforming your errors into lessons. Never blame others for your faults. Remember that taking complete responsibility for your life is a sign of maturity. When you fly, you learn that what matters is not touching the sky, but the courage to spread your wings. The higher you rise, the smaller and less significant the world looks. As you walk, sooner or later, you will understand that every search begins and ends in you. Your unconditional well-wisher, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. We'll continue on our next class. Jai Prabhuji.